My screen. Okay, so here's our next she'elah. So we were learning yesterday about two people who enter into partnership for a certain finite period of time. Um, According to the Machaber, you can void or cancel the partnership at any time, even if, assuming that the partnership involves the production and selling of goods. If those goods are not in your possession yet, then you can cancel the partnership at any time. According to the Rama, it's more complicated because a person has the ability to be makdish or to not makdish, to be mishabed, to encumber their handiwork towards an endeavor. So therefore, according to the Rama, you can't cancel a partnership. Um, if the two people have contracted to have a partnership for a specific period of time. Um, so, okay. Now, next Shayla. Misha kibel mechaver, again, laws of partnership. Misha kibel mechaver schora umamon kidei lisa v'litain bahem ulihitchalek berevach. Okay, so a person has taken on consignment um, goods from his friend. His friend is a manufacturer or an importer or whatever he is. And the other guy, Ruvain, that is the provider of the goods. Shimon is the one who has accepted upon himself to sell the goods and to go around and peddle them. Um, and they agree between the two of them that they'll split the profits. I provide the goods, you go around selling them, we split the profits. So the person, Shimon, who accepted these items on consignment, does he have a right to cancel the contract? Does Shimon have a right to say, I've decided I don't want to do this and just return the goods? Or is he obligated halachically to carry through with his commitment? Now, this could be true either if Reuven gives him goods to sell or if Reuven gives him money to make purchases with. But what are Shimon's rights and obligations as far as carrying through with a contract, a partnership that he said he was going to fulfill? So this is the question. So the answer is Hamakabel Esek Mechavero, that if a person accepts to do some kind of business dealing from his friend, so that they can split the profits after he engages in this endeavor. Even if he receives the merchandise or the business for a fixed period of time, let's say I'm giving you 6 months that you have to sell all of the product. Shimon does have the right to say, basically, I quit and here's the merchandise back, because he's like an employee in this case. An employee, like we learned before, has a right to quit the job even in the middle of the day. V'hamakabel cholik imo birevachim, afilu lo hishlam hazman shekavu l'siyum ha'izka. Then, but Ruvain is also entitled to be compensated for whatever Shimon has already profited. So if Shimon, let's say, after he takes the goods and says, I have 6 months to sell them, after a month, he realizes that he wants to move on to something else. So he sold a certain percentage of the goods. He's got to give whatever he hasn't sold, he's got to give back to Ruvain. And whatever he has sold, he's got to split the profits with Reuven, the provider of the goods. Abel Hanosein enu yachol lachzor bo va'afilu lo kavu zman. But Reuven has a little more limited rights, because once Reuven gives the goods or the cash to Shimon to either invest or to sell, even if there was no time limit set for, here, this is yours to do business with, So let's say Reuven gave him cash to go and engage in some business activity, or he gave him produce, or he gave him whatever commodity, whether consumable or non-consumable commodity, to sell and to make profit. So Reuven can't say, "Hey, it's already been 6 months. Whatever you haven't sold, give me back." Shimon can say, "No, I'm sorry. I still need more time, um, because um, you gave me this stuff to sell, and I'm going to sell it." Reuven says, "Well, I'm not happy with your performance. I'm not happy with the way that you're selling the stuff. You're not being aggressive enough, or you're not doing the right kind of investment." Shimon can say, "Well, once you've given it to me, it's too bad. You no longer have a right to rescind the deal." So it seems like that's only if there was no time limit that was set.
Mhm.
So where's this halacha come from? He says he's quoting this from the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch in Siman Kuf Ayin Vav, B'Shem Harosh, who says, "Hamakabel iska mechaber lizman katsuv, hamakabel yachol lachzer bo kedin poil, aval hanosein enu yachol lachzer bo." That if a person, you have again the Reuven and Shimon. Reuven is the owner of the goods, gives the goods to Shimon, and says, "Here, use these goods to make a profit." If it was for a specific time, according to the Rush, so then Shimon can quit mid-job and basically say, "I don't want to do this anymore." But Reuven does not have a right to terminate Shimon from the job that he's doing, because Shimon was hired for that purpose, and Shimon can say, "You hired me for X period of time, and I want to be able to finish the job." He's basically a contractee. V'chein kasav harambam the Hilchos Shutfin perak dalet halacha hey kasav hanosei mos lechaver leilech lo lamakom ploni lischora o liknos lo peres v'chulei v'shuv rotz lachzer lachzer samomon miyad hashutav. The Rambam writes a similar language, that if you give money or goods to actually the Rambam's case is if you give money, if Reuven gives money to Shimon and says, "Go ahead and invest it in such and such a place," even if Reuven wants to cancel and rescind the deal and say, bring me back the cash, he doesn't have a right to do that. He says, because Shimon can always say, "You hired me to do a specific job. I haven't done the job yet. I am under contract from you to do job X," even though there was no time limit set for doing job X. But Shimon can say, "I'm still planning to do job X, and therefore you can't demand the money back from me since you didn't set a time." So the first case in the Rush is where a time limit was set, and Reuven cannot cancel the deal until that time is over. And the Rambam's case is where there was no time set, but it was job specific. We said, "I want you to go to a certain place, and I want you to invest or sell or whatever it is." Shimon can say, "I haven't had a chance to do it yet. I still plan to go." Now, is there any like reasonableness clause in here? Like
10 years later,
what if Shimon has the money, but he hasn't gone, and it's now years later or months later? So I guess a Beis Din would have to intervene at that point and say there's got to be some reasonableness to Shimon's delay. But that's the part that's not clear.
I guess you could also build another performance criteria. You have to get a certain amount of money for it. Like there's lots of things, I suppose, that if he doesn't meet those, then he doesn't.
Right. So certainly when you're dealing with modern contract law, you would want to build that into any contract that you're going to be making with an employee who you're contracting with you're consigning your merchandise to him, or you're giving him your money. You would say, "I expect a certain return by a certain time." But I'll give you a perfect example. Person invests money in a real estate with a real estate company, and they say, "We're going to be purchasing and building this set of condo units, and you'll be able to make passive income from it, right?
Right.
Well, a lot of times there's delays,
Right.
and there's no way unless you can prove that there's been negligence. What if the market crashes? The real estate market crashes, and the investment company basically says, we've been delayed. Sometimes the delays can take years because they say, well, the project is still what do they call it, live? It's still an active project, but we've just been delayed because of construction costs and this and this and that. So, even in today's market, what you're doing is you're speculating.
Yeah.
You're placing your trust in someone who says that they can deliver and they can make money off of the money that you're giving them or the goods that you're giving them. And sometimes, you'd have to prove some kind of malfeasance or negligence in order to be able to demand your money back. It would seem.
Help mortgage companies, these mortgage funds and these mortgage.
Yeah, the mortgage funds were a couple frozen funds because of the markets that just dried right up. They just can't pay back the people the interest, so they freeze it. And that's part of the contract though. But they're able to not stop Robson, the biggest one. Yeah, that's how a lot of Jews have money there. And I don't recommend that's going, they just say we're stopping, can't make payments anymore. To the market conditions. They're gonna redo it again at a certain point, but they stop. Which is a problem, and they can do that legally. Not abroad, but
Wow.
And certain things constitute force majeure, right? Like war and things like that. But I recently realized in Israel, force majeure for war, there's always a war, right? Isn't a force majeure anymore.
Just define force majeure
Force
once again.
majeure is like accidents, God, floods,
Yeah.
tempests, earthquakes, riots, and
Unexpected.
and unexpected things might delay the project. But in
Yeah.
Israel and here,
Expected.
force majeure clause would include war. So if you're, supposed to build a condo and there's a war here, probably excused from your time performances or whatever you have to do. In Israel, apparently, war is not part of force majeure anymore. If there's a war, the building must go on, except if the people that are the constructor people are in the Elohim or actually
Well,
there has to be a causal relationship between the
Correct.
war
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
why the building isn't being built. Like, so your head contractor has to go to the building, you can buy some time, all right, but otherwise, no. No,
well,
the same thing with market fluctuations, that's not force majeure anymore, maybe in the past it was, but.
fascinating
maybe
but sad, I would
crash,
say.
I don't know. Unusual
yeah,
fluctuations.
so somebody buys a condo in Toronto a number of years ago to a developer. And prices through COVID went up dramatically. They priced, $1 million. Can the contractor go back and say, no, you have to give me 1.2, or they're locked in the one?
Not usually, I mean, you could stipulate that in the contract, in construction contracts, you can say certain things, but if you don't say it, then.
You're locked in.
You're liable. Stuck. Yeah,
I've seen developers just walk right away. Well, they said they locked in a price and locked in, can get out of it, and the costs went up so high, they just don't breaking the project. That's the lawsuits.
Yeah.
So then there's mine.
There you go. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. So then he quotes the Bach, who connects both the law of the Rush and the law of the Rambam. Okay. He says, Omnam habeis Yosef sham haven shalagabe hamakabel harosh v'harambam mechulakim heim. The Beis Yosef understands that the Rush and the Rambam are actually differing in one halachic respect. Kamosha Kosav Hatur b'shem harambam hashutfim sheisnu b'neim sheyamdu b'shutfus ad zman hakotzuv kol echad mehem ma'akev al chavero ve'enu yochol lechalek ad sheyagia zman hahu. So he says that according to the Rambam, if partners agree that they're going to engage in a partnership endeavor until a certain fixed time, neither one can back out of the deal without the consent of the other. Amnam bebedek habayis bir divrei harash v'harambam b'makabel iska dafka hanosinu delo yachol lachzer bo aval makabel yachol lachzer bo kedin poel. But it seems from the Rush that the person who accepted to do the job could quit in the middle of the term. Okay? He says, so there seems to be a differentiation between whether a person is an equal partner or whether he's an employee. And sometimes there's a gray area in determining whether you're an employee or a partner, because the difference is that an employee can quit at any time. If I hire you to do something and you agree to do it, but then you decide I've got something else I need to do, you can quit even midday, okay? Because I'm paying you to do this. But partners is where we are partners in an endeavor of business. So neither partner, if the partnership agreement was for, let's say, a year, neither partner has a right to quit without the consent of the other partner. And the question is, where is the line drawn between an employee and a partner?
Gets crazy.
Let's say one person is the money guy, and the other person is the labor guy. So there is a division of the responsibilities in the company, but do you call that a partnership or do you call that an employer-employee relationship? And I guess you could set it up in a contract to establish what the nature of the partnership is. But you do get into these gray areas in halacha, and that's why there's a difference of opinion between the Bach and the Beis Yosef as to whether the person who's accepted the goods or the money has a right to back out in the middle of the deal. Okay.
This all stems from a Jewish person can't be enslaved.
Hmm.
Every word is fine. Is that the whole issue about?
Why? Oh, you mean as far as why you're allowed to quit in the middle of
Yeah.
the day? I think so, but I think that's what we had said because the Torah doesn't condone slavery. Yeah. Okay. So let us go on. Shilos Teshuvas v'chikrei dinim. So again, some more questions and shuvas as far as shutfin. So the she'ela here is shutfin shelo kavu zman l'shutfis or shekavu zman v'nishlam oso zman shekavu. So either case number one is where they entered into a partnership without establishing a time criteria, a time limit, or they set up a time limit and that time has now passed. Ha'im yachol hashutaf lachlok b'scharo b'mamon shelo midas chavero v'lito l'schelko. Does one partner have the right to unilaterally dissolve the partnership by selling all the merchandise and splitting the profits? Kagon she'ein hashutaf hasheni nimtza b'sevivato o shehu be'eretz acheres. Let's say the other partner is not readily available, or he's in another country. Does one partner, now that the terms of the partnership have been fulfilled, either because there was no time limit set or a time limit was set and that time limit has passed, so one partner is very happy for the partnership to continue, but the other partner wants to unilaterally dissolve the partnership. Does he have an obligation to notify his partner that he wants to dissolve the partnership, or can he dissolve it de facto without even notifying the partner? So what would be the secular law in this case?
Normally you have to give notice, and a partnership at will, you can dissolve at any time on notice.
So why is notice necessary? Why can't the guy just say, I decided on my own that I am not interested anymore?
You usually have to tell the other side in your contractual relationship about what your intentions are, I guess maybe the other guy might have wrongfully assumed it's still a partnership and.
Right. And he's counting on
Yeah.
on a certain.
Yeah, also a partner can bind the other partner to other contracts too, right? So like, one guy, contracts and borrows money from a bank. If it's on behalf of the partnership, the other guy's liable too. But I think it's just to kind of cut the relationship.
There has to be notice given in secular law. So the question is, in halacha, does notice have to be provided? Let's say if it's difficult for me to contact the guy. let's say he's gone off and decided he wants to explore the world and he's turned off all his devices and he says, I won't be available for the next month. Okay. And the guy says, the other partner who's, schwitzing here and says, I'm not interested in continuing this business, this partnership. Can he just dissolve it without notifying? I mean, obviously he'll have to give the guy his share, his cut, but is he allowed to unilaterally dissolve the partnership? So the answer is that shutvim shelo kavu zmano keshaba zman lachlo kesashutvis v'ashutv eino nimtza be'ir uchedaime. So in this case where you're not able to reach the other partner, hashutv hasheni yachol lachlok ba'atzmo v'litol es chelko b'shutvus mibli yedias chavero. So the partner who wants to dissolve can do so even unilaterally without even notifying the other partner. B'davka bifnei shlosha anashim ne'emanim v'yodim b'shuma u'mechalkim shava b'shava v'notel es chelko. However, in selling off the merchandise or whatever assets of the partnership, it has to be done in front of three people who have a knowledge of valuation, so that he protects himself from the accusation that you sold off the assets of the corporation for too low of a price, because you have to do what's fair. Like, yes, you want to unilaterally dissolve the partnership. You have every right to do so if you cannot locate the other partner, but you have to do so fairly, so that the guy's entitled to know that you sold off the assets of the company at fair market value. Okay, v'imchilek es aschora b'fnei pachos mishlosha anashim b'dvarim shetzrichim based in lo asa v'lo klom. If, however, you did not do it in front of a beis din, in front of a group of three people who know the valuation principles, so then your action is null and void. V'im hukar,
Even if the price is right?
even if the price is right, unless you can actually demonstrate that you followed a particular index, and it's like you can clearly trace the paperwork. But he says if it wasn't done in front of a beis din, it's not valid. V'im hukar ahuzal hakol le'emtza ki'ilu lo cholku. He says, and therefore, if you try to dissolve the partnership and then the price of the goods that were left in the corporation shot up, then you have to be responsible to make your partner whole for the amount that he's now lost because you sold it without going through the proper channels.
What is it, what price went down? It makes a difference?
So he says it's all as if what you did was ineffective. So if you sold off the assets of the company, and you have this cash, and now the price of the goods has gone down, so you really do have to split the cash. But let's say you sold it off, and now the price has gone down on the goods, but you already, I guess, it's as if the partnership is still in play. So therefore, if the partnership is still in play, it's the company that has benefited from you getting a higher price than what they're worth. You can't say that, I've already dissolved the partnership, and therefore you're only entitled to take the lower price because, I left the goods at your doorstep or whatever. B'chol ze davka shecholku b'peros o yayin sheyesh yayin tov v'yesh yayin garua v'chayotze b'zeh b'dvarim halol tzrichim shuma. However, this requirement that when you liquidate the assets of the company, you split the assets of the company, you do so in front of three, is only when there are commodities of variable quality that are within the company. Let's say produce or wine, because certain wine is good quality, high quality, certain wine is low quality. So you need to be able to do evaluation in front of experts. But if they're partners in cash, let's say they own a bank, and one partner wants to dissolve the partnership, but one partner can unilaterally dissolve the corporate entity, leave the portion of his former partner with the beis din, like leave it with like an escrow company that's supervised by the Beis Din. Uvazeh megala daito lifnei Beis Din she'eno me'unyan od b'shutfus chavero. And in that way, he has done his whatever he's responsible to do to notify his friend that he doesn't want the partnership anymore. In other words, if you've done a proper valuation, but it wasn't done in front of three people, if it's a commodity that is easily that can be easily graded and valuated, then there are times when it doesn't have to be done in front of three. Like, if it's in the fabric industry, if it's in the dress industry, like in Ron's case, then you probably would need a proper valuation because every dress has a different value, and it has to be evaluated by people who are experts in this industry, right? But if it's, let's say, widgets or it's cash, so then you wouldn't need an expert valuation. But what you would need to do is leave the partners, the former partner's portion with an escrow company, so that it has to be left under the supervision of a Beis Din or some other supervisory body, that they know that you've left this money for your partner after you've liquidated the company. So does there have to be full disclosure and notification to the partner? There doesn't, if it's inconvenient or difficult to be able to reach the guy. So, okay.
Yeah, but usually when partnership dissolve and they sell at so-called market value, the value of the company goes down dramatically. It's just without two guys make a team. So he's almost basically putting his company going down. By a partner usually sells his side or wants to get out about each other.
Well, it could work the other way too. I've seen it the other way.
I've seen it.
If one partner get out of the way and finally the business
Well,
starts really prosper.
That's quite rare. Usually it's the other way around. Partnerships are very difficult.
Okay. So what is this based on? What is this halacha based on? This is a Gemara in Bava Metzia. It says that Isser v'Rav Safra asu iske yachad. There was a man named Isser and there was a rabbi named Rav Safra. They entered into a partnership together. Azal Rav Safra polag below daite de Isser ba'ape trei. So Rav Safra decided he wanted to dissolve the partnership, and Isser was not present. But Rav Safra went in front of two people and said, "I'm hereby dissolving the partnership." So Pirish Rashi, Rav Safra chilik es hashutvis bischora, velo hayud ma'os eladavar hatzarach shuma. What Rav Safra was doing when he was dissolving the partnership was basically liquidating the goods, meaning that they didn't have cash, but they had merchandise. And Rav Safra was basically saying, I'm taking half the merchandise, and I'm leaving half of the merchandise for Isser. So Asya Lakame Ba Ha'inyan Lifnei Rabba Bar Rav Huna. So this matter was brought to Beis Din for Rabba Bar Rav Huna, because Isser basically said, I don't trust that you split the assets in half properly. Amar Lola Rav Safra Le Chave Shlosha Anashim Shechalakta Bifneihem. So Rabba said to Rav Safra, bring me the three people that you dissolved the partnership in front of, so that I can cross-examine them. Klomar Have Asa Beis Din Shebifanav Chalakta. Vinami Have Shnei Edim Sheyaidu. Or bring two witnesses who can testify that you did it b'fnei shlosha dayanim dafka. So Amar la Rav Safra la Rav Bar Rav Huna minayin lecha davar zeh shetzarach lasos os b'fnei Beis Din dafka. So Rav Safra said, where do you get this idea that I have to, when I want to liquidate a partnership, I have to do it in front of three people? Amar lo shekain shaninu b'mishnah im yesham Beis Din masnam b'fneihem. That whenever you're going to take financial action that repercussions affect another person, you have to do it in front of a Beis Din. Okay, so you don't have the right to change ownership or to dissolve a partnership without three people. Ein sham beistam bifnei mi yasna shelo kodem. Umashma shein reshus likvo dvarim legabi mamon chavero elim ken yesham beistam. So it seems from there that you don't have a right to affect your friend's assets without doing so in front of a beistam. So Amar lo Rav Safra v'chizedoma hadover meha mishnah sham linyanenu. Hasim demasik mamona mehayu mosiv lahai be'inyan ba'inan beistam. He says, but Rav Safra says the case that you're referring to is a Mishnah where you want to transfer money from one party to another, that without the principal owner's knowledge. So there, I could understand that you need a beis din. But Rav Safra said, but in this case, I'm taking what is rightfully mine, and I'm leaving the other portion for my ex-partner Isser. So Gilui Dvarim Bilvadhu Sheyiru Shechalakti Biyosher. And therefore I shouldn't need a beis din. All I need is two people to see that I've divided the money fairly. So betray Sagile, and I should just need two. Teda Shebedavar Kagon Ze in Sarach Shlosha Shekain Shaninu B'Mishnah Almana Mocheres L'Mazono Seha Mirachush HaNiftar Shalo Bifnei Beis Din U'Levad Sheyiru Shnayim Shalo Tim Karzol. And the proof is from another Gemara that says that an almana is allowed to sell some of the assets of her deceased husband's estate to be able to be sustained by it, which she's entitled to. Well, all she needs is in front of two people. She doesn't need to go in front of a beis din. So the Gemara continues. We don't have time to continue. We'll have to pick this up on Monday, Amir Tzishem. But we'll see this back and forth of whether you need a beis din or not to liquidate assets when your partner is affected is something that is debated in the Gemara. Okay, we'll hold it here for today. Have a good Shabbos, everybody.